Okay, and this is the 405th's prop making panel. Thank you very much for coming by. I sincerely hope you learned something new and interesting, and that you can use some of this information to hopefully make cool and amazing new props and costumes that we have not seen before. That would be fantastic and awesome. I'm Rob Dailey. I'm also known as DocDailey on the 405th, and these are some of my fantastic coworkers / Spartans / ODSTs. So please round of applause to all the guys that are in costume. They are super hot and sweaty, especially with how warm it is, and thank God the AC in here is amazing. I know it doesn't make a difference to them, but hey, you know, it's still nice. Now, this is a specific prop making panel. So we're going to go over a couple of things that you need to be able to know about that would help expedite your prop making needs. Now, how many of you have never made anything before in any way, shape, or form and are here for a, oh my God, please for the love of God, how do I do this stuff? Please raise your hand. Fantastic, okay. Now, how many of you have made this kind of stuff and you're looking for new tricks and tips that you have never seen before and you want to learn that new cool thing? Okay, so we got a couple people that have already made some stuff. All right, fantastic. Okay, well, to start off from scratch, there are a few products and materials that I highly recommend that you get familiar and used to. How many of you have ever seen a house built from scratch? You know, either down the street or had your own house built right in front of your eyes and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, fantastic. Or any of you punched a hole in the wall accidentally. I've done that a couple of times. So the stuff that helps insulate your house is called extruded polystyrene. Extruded polystyrene is a kind of like a big styrofoam sheet. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, they are big, huge green or pink sheets that, you know, you go to pick it up and you're like, oh my God, this thing's huge. And they're usually actually the size of this panel right here. I mean, they are huge, all right? And that is exactly what we make this kind of prop out of and this kind of prop. So more or less, it's super lightweight. I hear you can actually pass this around so you guys get the general feel of it. Please don't thoroughly destroy it. It's the only one I have. I got ahead of myself. There's one thing that I will have you repeat throughout the entire course of this panel. It is a silhouette. Everyone know what a silhouette is? Exactly. So if I give you a hand gesture similar like, you know, like this, you would anticipate that to be a lady figure. All right? That is the silhouette of a lady in a very generalized sense. So whatever your prop is, imagine taking your hands and making, you know, if you're going to make a huge hammer, you're doing like a that thing, right? You know, kind of like a that, yeah? Like a big huge hammer, right? Okay, so think doing that first. You want to make a silhouette that works exactly for your size, your shape, what you want. You know, I wanted to make sure this thing was this long, and then I worried about the detail later, all right? Along with a lot of the other armor, the weapons, the guns, all that kind of thing, the most important thing was that the silhouette, the actual outline of the entire piece, was exactly what you want, all right? Now, I understand and agree that people want to make human-style guns, all right? I was in the military for 8 years. I deployed to Afghanistan. I used real guns in a military way against other people. I refuse to teach anyone how to make a real-looking gun. That doesn't mean you shouldn't. I personally will not do it. But there are things that you can do to help make things look real. So I caution you, when you start making human, real-style guns like Call of Duty or battle rifles or handguns, chain guns are obviously, that's comedic and cartoony. So a policeman's not going to pull you over and say, hey, that's like, you know, too real, all right? You're safe with that kind of goofy. But, you know, I caution you, please. There are people out there that don't recognize, appreciate, and understand that these are toys, they are props, they are fake. And some people are so good at painting them, sometimes they get themselves into trouble. We actually had a bunch of guys, we had the Utah project. There was a bunch of guys in halo armor, and they're, you know, bringing out a bunch of the real-looking guns, sniper rifles, things like that. They had in the back of the pickup, and they got pulled over by the state police. That was an interesting conversation and a photo op, surprisingly enough. The Cosplay of it was fantastic. However, the first part of that conversation was not fantastic. So, but in any event, so throughout the course of the panel, I want you to think to yourself, if you take nothing else away from all of this, is silhouette. It's the silhouette that will bring you and make you an amazing prop. Now, we have extruded polystyrene, which is the easily carvable, easily cuttable, easily meltable product, super lightweight. You take an X-Acto knife, a regular sharp blade of some sort, and you just kind of start whacking away at it, and there's a whole bunch of tutorials online and very talented artists that show you step by step exactly how to cut that material, how to shape that material, and then how to paint that material. Everyone familiar with acrylic paint? Acrylic paint is the stuff in little bottles, non-toxic. I mentioned yesterday you can pour it in your mouth and eat it. It's non-toxic, you'll be all right. I don't recommend it. Please don't do it. Just kidding. All right. But if you use spray paint on that gun that I just handed out, you will melt it. Now, if you want that effect, then you know what you want to do to get that effect. However, if you're trying to make it look like metal, having it look like it was melted, maybe not the right effect you want to go for. So, we have that. Now we also have, a lot of these guys have armor that is made out of EVA foam, all right? It's the foam floor matting. Now, I do not know many people who make props like this. However, when some people do, they do actually a very good job. This is a Covenant carbine. Now, you'll notice that, actually, I don't know if you are, actually, Eric, if you would be kind enough to hold that up. Okay, so you see that silhouette. Now, this is my ultra high-def, 100% accurate game replica of the exact same gun. From where you are standing right now, does that look pretty good? Mm-hmm. All right? When you take a look at this and you get hands-on with it, you're going to realize it's made out of the foam floor padding. It looks fantastic. It took him, is he in here? He's not in here. I want to say it took him about maybe 12 hours to make that. This took me about 8 months. Okay? So if you take a picture and you're in armor and you're doing your thing and you went, ah, the whole deal, are you really going to, when you take a picture, it's not going to make a huge difference. Okay? This looks great in reality when you're physically right up on it, and you get the lights and all that kind of stuff, and yay, bonus. But that, for your regular walking around, this thing is almost 20 pounds. All right? That thing is like 1 ounce. I mean, like, you can whip it around and throw it up in the air, walk away, get a hot dog, come back, and then catch it. Like, it is silly light. So it's an excellent material to start looking into your super, hyper, silly, goofy, huge props. Like a lot of people who want to make a sickle, like the techno sickle from...
I'll be bringing the sickle that we made.
Oh, excellent. Very good. Fantastic.
Give me a few moments to get PowerPoint up.
Sure. Okay. Fantastic. I'm gonna keep going, and we'll have it come in as we go along. Now, for those of you who,
yes.
So as you can tell, there are already some things percolating in the back of your mind. You know the first project, the first prop. You know when you get home, you're like, oh my God, I want to make this stuff. You already know what that is in the back of your head. You already know. So what I hope as I go through all these different materials, you go, that's the one I want. That's the material I want to start with. And that's exactly where I want to start checking out YouTube tutorials on how to make it.
Don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, you're already in armor here. You're plugging in. Okay. Don't worry about it. Just lay that down nice. All right. Okay. Now, in my real life, I'm actually a college professor, so you can imagine my poor students who have to deal with this kind of energy and this kind of talking all the time. I like to think that I'm entertaining, and I like to think that I teach some people, but it's arguable sometimes. Now, let's see if I can get this projector up and running real quick. Well, it's running, so we're already happy with that. Now, let's see. Okay, now for those of you who want to make something a little bit more durable, because obviously extruded polystyrene, the gun that you had walk around, you saw it was nicked, dinged, banged, dropped, and obviously can take a little bit of damage. And it adds to the character of the piece. However, if you bang it up too much, it can show a little bit too much damage and ruin the aesthetic that you're going for.
There we go.
Rare points.
If you, yep, okay. I don't see the slideshow button.
Try like F7, that might start it.
Sorry, this is me learning new programs, so sorry.
Slideshow at the top, beside tools.
There it is.
Oh, it's F5.
There we go.
We have a bunch of talent.
Improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Okay. And he's got to say.
Alright. Okay, so I'll work on my squats today. Okay, so there are other materials. So for all of you who were here yesterday and I talked about Pepakura, I get to show you it now. Alright, I'm also going to talk about the cardstock. We already covered EVA foam. I have an example of Warbler, and we already are kind of talked about the extruded polystyrene, or EPS. Alright, so this is what Pepakura looks like. So for all of you who are like, what the heck? Now, this gun right here, if you can tell from the silhouette, is exactly that one right there, the Covenant Carbine, and then the other one here. Hold on, so just hold it up for reference. As much as I like lifting 20-pound weights all the time, I am not strong on food. So, okay, so you can kind of see where this originally came from. All right. Now this is an older version from a Halo 3. This is a Halo 4 version, just for those people who care for that information. So you can actually print it out flat on a piece of cardstock, and then from there you can resin bondo, paint it, all that kind of good stuff. And it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the sculpting and how you sketch, and there's none of that artsy-fartsy part to it. It is straight up tab A, sloppy, tab A, sloppy, tab A, sloppy, and so on and so forth, okay? So this represents how many pages? This is 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 25 pages. Not too terribly bad. There are hundreds of different types of props and weapons and things that people have already made these kinds of files that you can actually, go ahead and fold and make. Let's see, do one of you guys have a helmet that's Pepakura? Yeah, actually your entire suit is made out of Pepakura. So this guy right here, he did this exact process to make that entire costume. I think that's pretty spiffy. And you can take your knuckles, you can knock on it and say, oh my god, I can't believe. And that's lasted 5 years now?
It's at least 5 years old.
Okay, so there you go.
Older than our relationship.
Oh wow. You might actually want to just let that one go when you move, so you don't have her telling you, hey, you've had that longer than me. I can't say
wise.
Okay. Now, I belong to a prop group called Stony Props, as well as the 405th, and with this particular group, we specialize in a little bit more of the crazier movie quality style props. And we coordinate with each other. Now, this is obviously a gravity hammer. That thing's like the huge honking, crazy thing you want to make. Now, this was made out of a long PVC pipe. Everyone's familiar with PVC piping. And actually, examples of PVC piping here. And PVC piping right there. And the rest of this was Pepakura. Got the patterns. They cut it out of EVA foam, which is this stuff right here, and your armor right there, and then painted it within an inch of its life. All right? So that helps you get an idea, and then when you start whipping around this huge hammer, and you start jumping up in the air and putting it between your legs like it's a broom, people go like, oh my god, how strong are you? And you're like, I'm strong like, ooh. All right. Now, Warbler is, now this is a friend of mine, Kamui Cosplay. Her name is Svetlana. She's from Germany, and she has a wonderful German accent. And she is by far and away the best Warbler artist I have ever seen to date. If you look her up on Facebook, I highly recommend you check her out. And she makes the most amazing props and costumes made out of Warbler. Warbler is a thermoplastic. It looks like a sheet of paper, more or less, but it kind of has this brown wood grain look. You can cut it with a pair of scissors, and you use a little bit of a heat gun, and you can warp it and do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. This is how she chooses to make, happens to be one of the props that she's made with hers. You're essentially looking at it the same way you would if you were doing this kind of prop. You're going to make an internal piece of something, and then you're going to add some filigree, add some more filigree, which is just fancy design on top of it, fancy design on top of it, fancy design on top of it. So it's really just layering the fancy as you get further out. But overall, you'll see that the silhouette is identical between the two. The core piece of, I want to say she used extruded polystyrene, or maybe she used like some wood for the actual inner piece, and then just kept wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping. The only catch with this is this particular type of stuff, the foam formatting, is very cheap. It's about $20, if not cheaper, down to even $10. I've even seen it down to $8 at Harbor Freight for 4 sheets of it. Okay, that's like 16 square feet per 20 bucks. All right, you get a lot of bang for your buck with this stuff. This material right here is like $80 for the largest sheet you can get, and it just never seems like it's enough. It is very, very expensive. However, you do get some really good quality out of it. If you're a new person to this kind of thing, I do not recommend working with this material straight out the gate. You're welcome to, and you can prove me wrong, but that's not my best recommendation. I think either working with this stuff or working with this stuff would be my best recommendation for you to start out with. Moving on. Okay, we have 3D printing and extruded polystyrene. This is a bolt shot from Halo. Regrettably, us guys from the 405th, we love our Halo, so most of our pictures are about that. But you can see that this particular picture was made out of the exact same stuff I have here, extruded polystyrene. I was very proud of it. It looks exactly right. And you can see that the silhouette of this piece is almost identical to the silhouette of this piece. This right here was 3D modeled by another friend of mine at Stony Props, and he made that 110% game accurate. So it's slightly different, just a scotch, but you can see there's significantly more detail. This one I put a glow stick in the middle to make it look all cool and fancy, which actually I believe he used for this. He put a glue stick in here for his little ammo change-out counter. Mine, with this one, you know, I did with a slightly different resin plastic, and when you push it in, it glows, and it also turns the gun on. All right, so I'm telling you, now that took me months and months and months and months and months and months and months to work on, which everyone's kind of like, okay, yeah, you did a good job, it looks nice. Or you can just, you know, pay $5, break a glow stick, shove it in there and say, hey, look at it, it glows, and everyone goes, oh wow, that looks nice. So, you know, you can choose to go super expensive, or you can go and choose super cheap. And you know something that's super cheap? You know how much it costs. You guys do. You know, so just don't tell people about it, it'll be just fine. But yeah, so this one kind of sort of got crushed and damaged in a flood, so I felt reasonably obligated to try and make a 3D printed version. Which also, if you've been over to the booth that I'm over at, this is part of the pieces. And you can come up here and you can get hands-on and take a look at it. There are people who accept commissions for 3D printing if you do not have access to a 3D printer, so this is not necessarily outside the realm of reason. However, there is a lot of post-production chemistry work that you do need to do to make it look super duper spiffy. It's a little bit more cost prohibitive, if you will. Let's see, keep moving. Question and answer part. Okay, now Ben, if would you like to talk about your fully working Gatling gun?
Well, the little thing fell off on the inside of it, but it does actually spin. I can actually spin with my hand. I do have a drill bit that runs all the way from front to back, next to a drill at the back. I mean, there wasn't any, there's files online for it, for PEP and everything, but I decided to make it out of PVC piping because it's a lot sturdier. The handle's also made out of PVC, but the stuff up here is just the EVA foam that he was talking about. And all the little knickknacks were just pickups from hobby stores or what's that one store called? Like a Halloween store, basically. That's where the bullets come from. And I mean, that pretty much it just came to mind that I built it. I mean,
well, and again, it looks like the silhouette of a Gatling gun. You know, like you got the 3 tubes here, you got a muzzle to it, you got some shielding, you got like some part where you put the hand, and then when you get a chance after the panel, you can come up here and take a look at the specifics of it. And again, I cannot stress enough, a second cardinal rule of making anything in this world: kit bashing. Someone else has already made something way cheaper, easier, quicker, faster than you have, and there's no reason for you to reinvent the wheel. So when you're looking for bullets or guns or things of that nature, a little Halloween store, you spend, you know, like what?
$10.
$10, yeah?
Yep.
That's not terribly bad.
That's just a quarter of the bullets.
So no reason for you to sit there and try to sand and paint each individual bullet. You know, there's people out there that do that, and I'm not going to knock them for it. However, if you're being frugal and you know your time is worth money, you can go something a little cheaper, easier, quicker, faster. And it looks like you also used a Xbox controller, button scheme, and all that kind of good stuff. That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's exactly. And then you have a tripod, like a regular camera tripod. You go to like a garage sale or something. Someone's going away.
I always build cheap.
Excellent. And anything particularly cool or interesting about the knife guys or any other props you have hanging out, like your knife?
Like my knife, for example, my handle is Papakura, but for the blade, I wanted it to be convention safe because you get flagged for that a lot. So both sides of my blade are just mat work, and the middle of the blade is like craft bones, so it's nice and soft, convention safe. And I just had a little piece of, I think of an erector set going up the middle there to give the support.
A erector set?
Yeah, it's a piece of an erector set.
So your erector set is keeping that going into one direction. Okay, very good. Awesome. Yeah, we're trying to dance around adult conversations kind of jokes. Okay. Now, I want to be able to ask you I want you to have the ability to ask any specific questions that, hey, look, I had this mental image of a dream of a super ultra awesome sickle hammer combo Thor American shield thing, you know, that, you know, shoots like a boomerang. Like, okay, that blows my mind. But so if anyone has any questions, different types of techniques, anything else, anything you've seen that you would like me to discuss any further, please raise your hand. I'd be happy to answer them. I've answered all of your questions. Oh, very good.
Do you have any information on like different types of adhesives you can use for like EVA foam versus things like you know, the polystyrene you're talking about?
Excellent answer. Or excellent question. Hey!
You will provide the excellent answer.
Certainly, hopefully. For stuff like this, for the EVA foam, regular hot glue. All right, you can sit there and you take a knife and you can either cut the edges off if it kind of bubbles out, or while it's still warm, you can take your finger and go, oh my God, that's hot, and you wipe it off. All right, now that is the safe, non-toxic version of doing it. Whether you know it or not, and something that I also want to beat the drum on. All right, so the first thing I wanted you all to learn was a silhouette. What was the second thing I wanted you to learn? Make sure you walked away with. Kit bashing. If someone else made it easier, quicker, cheaper, faster, there's nothing wrong with buying it and then incorporating it into your build. The third thing is with is more or less safety. All right, super glue can do damage to your lungs and the nerves in your nose and to your eyes and animals and other things that are around you. Okay, when you work with EVA foam, when you use a heat gun to help mold it, that actual, if you're getting too close to it and you don't have proper ventilation, there are fumes that can be expressed and that is not good for your health. There are things about making props and costumes that are just genuinely, they're chemicals, and you know something? Chemicals can do bad things to you. So, work. All right. Oh, there we go. Wow, you had a little reference page. There are things you need to be aware of. So even using super glue, which you can use for this, I used for this, I used for my other props, and all of us have used super glue at extreme lengths. But you do need to make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. It can do a little damage. Now, extruded polystyrene likes melting, okay? So if you use spray paint, it will melt, like I said before. But with the super glue, there's two types of super glue. There's one that will adhere against anything, like all of our armor and whatnot, and you won't even notice the difference. There is a plain super glue, like airplanes. The guys who do the radio-controlled airplanes, a lot of their aircraft are made out of different types of styrofoam. They do use a very safe version of that super glue. Regrettably, I don't know the name of it that delineates it between regular super glue or not. You'll have to kind of check that out. Usually it's styrofoam safe super glue is what you want to usually Google and let your kung fu travel that way into the interwebs. So that is what I used for a lot of the pieces on here. So that was when I glued them together, I used hot glue, but then there are other things like the smaller 2mm thick foam that just gives you that little bump of detail and just gives a little bit of a different silhouette, which is a silhouette on top of silhouette on top of silhouette. That's how I stuck those on. And then you pray to God that this, when you start spray painting or you start using other paints, whether you know it or not, it actually kind of packs it down too when it becomes dry and hard. As far as any other kinds of adhesives that I would recommend, I think that more or less brings you up to speed.
Want to add something to your
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Go for
Hot glue. Here's the one thing I will stress. You want to make sure you're using true hot glue. Generally now, like you go into Walmart and buy hot glue, it is low temp melt glue. But me standing here in my armor, I'm generating enough body heat, the low temp glue will begin to separate. So you want to be using true high temp glue in a true high temp gun. Because the variable temperature guns, some people use them. I discovered when I did some research that the variable temperature guns don't generate the same amount of heat, and it seems to make a chemical change in the glue.
Now,
So that's why I wanted to stress that, because when we started, my wife and I, who helped with the panel yesterday, we accidentally used low temp hot glue. And just sitting in the car, the piece was sitting in her car, I think in November. The heat from the light coming through the window of her car caused the piece to separate. And at that point in time, that was 2 or 3 days worth of labor for us. And I just kind of looked at it and said, trash can.
And then she killed you.
And that is a perfectly acceptable reason to openly weep in public. That's totally okay. No one will judge. There's no judgment. All right. Now you're absolutely right with the high temp glue. I have a nice scar on my wrist here from high temp glue. I was doing my thing actually on that incineration cannon.
Ironic.
I want to bad touch it in a bad way. But anyway, no, I was gluing some pieces down. It was melting. It was bonding all the pieces together. I was super happy and fantastic, and a bloop went down, and I felt it go, there's pain. It's hot. Let me wipe it off. Oh, wiped it off. I'm like, oh, mother. So you can see how it can become an exponential hurting process. So please, 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 be careful with the high temp glue. It is what you want to use, but please make sure that you use it appropriately and judiciously. All right?
And your X-Acto blades too. Those go sailing through your skin just as easy as anything else.
Now, when I was in the military, I worked in medicine. I worked with only sharp things, okay? Sharp things do not cut you. All right? I'm sure all of you have heard this at one point in your life. Sharp knives do not cut you. Dull knives do. Because what ends up happening is, as you're cutting this stuff with your sharp knives, all right, or you're cutting the styrofoam with your sharp knives, they will start to dull, some faster than others, depending on what company you buy from. But as they start to catch and they start to pull and they start to do damage and they start to do things and you start to get mad and you start to pull and then you start to cut your thumb off and you go, wow, that's bleeding. That's not a good thing. And then the pain hits your brain and you go, oh my God. You know, so it's just a little bit of a lag. You deal the damage and then you go, is that going to bleed? That's starting to bleed. Oh, it is actually bleeding and it's starting to go. Not a good career move.
Orban.
Yeah, right, yeah. So, I didn't want you on anyway. All right. So, okay. I sincerely hope that definitely fleshed out and answered your question for adhesing and gluing and all that kind of good stuff. Are there any other questions that I can help answer?
I'm looking for a bunch of different opinions on this. What's the best way to get the shiniest, smoothest, anything possible?
Clear coat.
Okay. So the shiniest, cleanest, most pearlescent, amazing Iron Man buffed armor you could possibly ever get. The kind of like when you drive a Cadillac and you want that thing to just look amazing. You know, the light doesn't even do the amazingness justice. If you take a look at here, I'll pass this piece around so you can get a look at it. All right. When you start to, now everyone is familiar that sandpaper has different grades of grit, right? So when I say you have 80 grit sandpaper, what I try to think in my head is you have a sheet of paper and you're trying to fit 80 pieces of rock on that paper. They're pretty big, all right, because you know you have enough room to fit 80 rocks on this piece of paper. If I'm talking about 800 grit paper, you have to try to fit 800 pieces of rock on that same piece of paper. Obviously, they have to get really, 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 really tiny. That's my mental thing that I keep straight in my head. So when you first start off and you start making things, you obviously want to start with a higher grit paper, where lower grit paper, excuse me, haha, catching myself in my own panel. And you want to just kind of rough it out, and again, get the correct silhouette, all right? Once you get done doing that, and you work your way all the way down to, the highest I ever really go is 320, 400-ish. When you get much past that, you're literally polishing polish on polish, and you almost can't even tell the difference. But what ends up happening is, as you spray paint, and as you use the paint to actually go on, there's a huge thing that a lot of people gloss over, and a lot of us have learned the hard way, that you should not do. Spray paint, regardless of whether you like to admit it or not, is temperature sensitive. You need to be around 72 degrees or a little bit warmer. If you are in ultra hot temperatures, sometimes it'll actually dry mid-air before it gets to the actual piece. And it'll start to cause an orange rippling effect. You think of the surface of an orange. That is anything but sexy looking, all right? You don't want to cause that. But also, if it is too cold, it will start to cool and freeze the paint before it gets to where it's supposed to go, and it'll cause the exact same problem. So, to help answer your question, after you sand it to where you touch it and you go, you know, it feels nice and it feels smooth, you know? So after you get done doing that and you feel comfortable and you start to do the paint and you start to do the, oh my God, it's going to look sexy in 2 minutes, I just need to spray it with a color and it's going to look great, make sure, let your excitement be your excitement. However, pause for a moment, shake your rattle, read the instructions, shake it for 30 seconds, shake it for 30 seconds, make sure the little ball's bouncing around, make sure the temperature is this amount and the other thing, okay, well, or check your phone and Google app it, you know, like, okay, yeah, it's about the right temperature, okay, but here's the thing, make sure the can is the right temperature too, all right, not just the temperature outside, but the can itself. Leave it outside for a couple minutes to actually warm up to the right ambient temperature. And then spray paint left to right to left, up to down, whatever combination of ways. Let that dry, rinse and repeat. Once you get done doing that, you'll start to see the amazing awesomeness of everything start to come out in your piece. If you do not do that, and you get excited like I have many, way too many times, you think you learn from your mistakes. But when it gets to the painting and you're like, oh my God, I just need to finish it, I've been working way too long on this, you tend to get a little exuberant. So if you can contain your excitement, if you can make sure you check the temperatures correctly, and you can make sure that you have set yourself up for success, then you will be able to replicate that amazing Iron Man look into armor. There are other things that I can discuss at length for actual armor pieces and replicating that, but for the purposes of this panel, I think that hopefully answers your question. Okay. Question. Hey, what's up, dude?
What's the best type of paint to use on like that type of foam and EVA foam?
Okay, excellent question. There are two types of paints that I highly recommend. One is acrylic, which is the safe, you pay $1, get a bottle worth, and that is what I used on this. There's also latex paint. I highly recommend latex paint because when you go to paint it on, it stretches, and I said turn it off. Please wait a moment. I will not wait a moment. I will trip. So latex paint, you go to Lowe's, you go to Home Depot, and if you're going to paint something like this and you do not have the facility to use spray paint, I highly recommend you use latex paint. It's a brush on, all right? And this is one of those moments where going cheap is not a good thing. Get an expensive brush, all right? One of those brushes, and you go, why am I going to pay 15 bucks for a brush? Do it. You'll thank me later. Just please do it. And you use the latex paint and you brush it on. And once you get the hang of it and you put 1 or 2 layers on, you'll start to get rid of the actual brush strokes, and it'll start to look great. So that way, when you accidentally flex it, bend it, or move it, it doesn't destroy it. The latex aspect of that paint allows it to bow and flex. Now you can put acrylic on top of that for the weathering and to actually, make it look spiffy. And that is not that big of a deal. Thank you very much. See, I love security with the lightsaber. I make sure I get all my pieces back. It's great. And the long hair too, and it sells bouncer. It's awesome. Or dark Lord of the Sith. Excuse me.
Dark Lord of the Sith.
Works either way.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and then of course you can always use a rattle can of paint. All right. Now, some of you, how many of you have heard of Plastidip? All right, you guys in the back have heard Plastidip, okay. Plastidip is a spray on rubber, okay? Which in and of itself, when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh my god, that's fantastic, I can't believe it. How many of you guys use Plastidip on your arm?
Not anymore.
Okay, all right, so you guys
sure,
did.
I didn't actually paint this. This is actually just the plastic of itself.
Okay, excellent. Here's the thing with Plastidip. It is super, ultra, very, very, very ultra bad for you. Okay, when you spray it and you smell it and you get those fumes that hit your face, that is like breathing in. It's gonna kill you. All right, it's like breathing in the cancer. Go ahead and just, it's all sorts of not good. The good news is once it gets done curing and drying, it's no longer breathing in the cancer. It's in perfectly fine rubber. But the accelerants that they use, ultra not good, ultra not healthy, and if you're wearing the respirator but your dog isn't, guess what? You're doing the same damage to your dog or your cat or your goldfish or any other combination of things. So please be aware of things that are around you. I do not recommend it. I think there are other things out there that are better. Now, as far as the rattle can spray paint, all right, there are 2 types. There's one, you get Rust-Oleum, whatever, Krylon, whatever, and then there are other ones that say for plastic. It says goes on plastic, okay? That is ultra amazing. Please, for the love of God, buy that. You will thank me later. That is what I use on all of my armor and all of the other things that may have to flex. You use it on yours. Do you use it on yours?
I just wanted to point out something.
Oh, sure, go for it, go for it.
Rust-Oleum. If you buy, like what I did, if you buy a helmet online or like Etsy or eBay or something, ask whoever's selling it, whoever made it, what type of paint is good, because I actually spent like $175
a lot of money. You spent a lot of money.
Total $325 first on one helmet that I didn't ask whoever made this. I used Rust-Oleum on it. It just corroded it. Like there were holes here. It looked like Swiss cheese. Right. I spent another $175. Not Rust-Oleum. Krylon. Beautiful.
Now, there is some fine levels of chemistry that do happen that, regardless of whether you paid attention in high school chemistry or you're about to get to high school chemistry, chemistry happens whether you like it or not, just like physics, gravity, and taxes. So it does happen whether you know it or not.